So, Euan, thank you for taking the time out to do this. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself for those who may not be aware of who you are and what you're involved with.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Dr. Euan McTurk. I'm a consultant battery electrochemist who's been working on and driving electric vehicles since 2009. The first decade or so of that was spent in academia and then industry working on next generation batteries that will hopefully see use in electric vehicles one day. And then also taking the batteries that you'd find in electric vehicles today, such as the 18650, as it's called, the cylindrical cells that you'd find in a Tesla Model S, opening those up, sticking various rods of science into them, extra electrodes, thermal sensors, and so on, and then putting it back together and getting it to pretend that nothing had happened to it. And that way we were able to see deep inside the cell, how hard can you really push them, what causes them to fail, and how do you stop them failing? I then built up a state-of-the-art battery test facility in Edinburgh before founding the consultancy I've got today, working on everything to do with fundamental electrochemistry, electric vehicles, charging infrastructure, static energy storage, and so on.
And you've kindly agreed to do a series of white papers for the Vehicle Remarketing Association. And the first one has just been published, which actually puts a lot of the series in context of what to expect. And its name that we've published is talking about, what the vehicle remarketing sector should be looking at. What are the key areas in this white paper that you've created, especially for the VRA?
Yeah, so the first of the white papers looks very much at charging. How do you charge an electric vehicle, the different ways you can do that, slow charging, rapid charging, the different sockets that you might encounter, what limits the charging speed, what's the state of public infrastructure, what's the state of home and work charging infrastructure today, and of course, crucially, for vehicle remarketers, what charging facilities do you need on your premises, and how do you educate potential buyers on how to charge an electric vehicle? What do you need to know, and what do your customers need to know?
And thinking about that, you mentioned earlier the charging infrastructure. How do you see the charging infrastructure developing in the next few years? Because it's a crucial element for this vehicle ownership of battery electric vehicles.
The answer to that is exponentially. So although there's a lot of hit pieces in the press at the moment saying, oh, we don't have enough chargers and all of this, look at what's happening right in front of our eyes. So ZapMap, which is a major charge point finding website and data analytics website, they count the number of charge points that are currently available publicly in the UK. And it's over 40,000 at the moment, of which there's typically about 1,000 installed every month. But that rate of installation is increasing exponentially. And the number of chargers that are being put in at large charging hubs is getting bigger and bigger. And some of what we used to think were very big charging hubs, even 18 or 24 months ago, are already being expanded, partly to meet demand today, but partly to future-proof for demand tomorrow. So the government has said that they need about 300,000 public charge points by 2030. The Charge UK trade body that's been set up with about 18 charge point operators, commercial charging networks, they reckon that they're going to be able to double the number of public charge points in the UK within the next year. And just one of their members says they reckon they'll have 100,000 charge points, public charge points in the UK by 2030. And remember, there are 18 members there. So genuinely watch this space. It's entirely doable. And if you're skeptical about it, look at Norway, where 90% of new vehicles are plug-in, and the vast majority of those are pure electric. And they manage just fine. They've got the infrastructure, they've built it out. And even in areas where there's very few driveways, bear in mind, if you can charge at home, it's really easy to own an EV. But even for people in apartment blocks without driveways, they make it work because they have the infrastructure ready for it. And that is coming. It's already been built out at quite an impressive pace.
And we know that range anxiety is always a key comment coming from the consumers or attitude towards the ownership of a battery electric vehicle. At what point do you think that the public will start to believe that access to charging is no longer an issue and not part of the consideration of the ownership of a battery electric vehicle?
When they test drive an EV, take it for a proper long-term test drive, maybe have it for 48 hours or something like that, take it on a proper trip, you'll find that it's not range anxiety that's the issue. That is obsolete now, because your average new EV on the market has a range in excess of 200 miles per charge. And I, for one, have a bladder range of 180 miles per charge. And that is apparently above average. So, you know, people generally need to stop after about 2 or 3 hours worth of driving. The car doesn't generally need to stop. Older ones do, of course, but there's plenty of charging infrastructure at service stations. Some of them, you know, there's a handful of chargers. Some of them, they're well into the tens and tens of high power chargers now. So the likes of ZapMap will put you right as to where those big charging hubs are. And as I say, there's more being built all the time. There's £950 million worth of funding being dedicated by the government to putting in grid connections at motorway service stations to make sure that there's enough power able to supply all of these high power chargers. Incidentally, the national grid will easily cope with those high power chargers. There's hundreds of gigawatts worth of renewable and storage capacity coming online by 2030. It's just a case of getting that power to where it needs to be. And that's where those necessary upgrades are being made and the funding's being put. So yeah, really, it's a case of, you know, you do get the occasional naysayer piece in the press, but it's up to vehicle remarketers to put those customers at ease and say, look, you know, this is the true range of this electric vehicle. This is where you can charge it. Have a look on ZapMap, look where the public charge points are near where your usual routes are or where you live or where you work. You'll find it's a lot easier than you might think. So yeah, there's obviously been a proper ramping up of negative press recently, but hopefully this white paper will help vehicle remarketers to help customers to understand the reality of the situation and not be evangelical about it, but by being pragmatic about it, even that paints the much rosier picture than these customers are being told by the tabloids.
And in terms of building charging facilities, you know, what should the remarketing companies be looking for? You know, we obviously, in terms of vehicle services, logistics, storage, etc., all sit within that remarketing sector. What should the companies actually think about investing in and be looking for now?
So this very much depends on how many vehicles you typically have within your inventory at any one point, and it depends on the kind of mileage that they do. How many vehicles are out every day being moved about, being test driven, etc. How far are those test drives? And then, you know, how quickly do they need to be turned around for the next customer? If you have a bunch of very old electric vehicles in your fleet, for example, the Sunderland built sort of 24 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf, that'll have a real world range of about 60 to 80 miles per charge. So, you know, if you do a couple of longish test drives, then yeah, they're going to need a rapid charge to turn around, to turn them around fairly quickly. But as I said, most electric vehicles these days, you're looking at a real world range in excess of 200 miles per charge for the later models. So that means that you could probably get away with slow charging them overnight, or even just giving an opportunity charge on a slower charge point rather than needing a rapid charger to give that quick turnaround. So having sat down, looked at how often you're moving your vehicles, and if you assume that 100% of those are going to be electric, then yeah, how many miles do you need to add to them in a given amount of time? Then you can have a look and see whether you'll be fine with just AC charge points. So that will be your socketed type 2 charge point. If you have a single phase power supply to your premises, then it will be a 7 kilowatt wall box that you'll get. That'll add somewhere between 20 and 30 miles of range per hour, depending on the efficiency of the electric vehicle. If you have a 3-phase power supply, you're as well going for a full fat 22 kilowatt AC charge point, but one that is dynamically load managed. So you could have a row of these charge points that are all connected to a grid supply that wouldn't be able to supply full power to all of them. But if you have a vehicle that has a 22 kilowatt onboard charger, like a Renault Zoe, and then one that's got a 7 kilowatt onboard charger, like a Nissan Leaf, then you're able to give full power to both of those vehicles because that's within the maximum of your grid limit. And it basically allows electrons to be juggled to the vehicles that need them the most without compromising the charging times of other vehicles, as it would be if it was a row of purely 7 kilowatt charge points. That said, most vehicles today have between 7 and 11 kilowatt onboard chargers. So remember, the onboard charger for AC limits the maximum charge power that you could possibly get, even if the charge point itself can charge at a higher power. If you do need anything faster than, say, 7 or 11 kilowatts for most EVs, or 22 kilowatts for the likes of your Renault Zoes, or the occasional premium vehicle that has optional 22 kilowatt onboard charging, like older Model S's, for example. If you do need to go faster, then you're going to need to look at DC rapid chargers, and they take care of the conversion or rectification of AC electricity from the grid to DC for rapid charging. That thumps it into the battery at a much higher power. Now, rapid chargers are more expensive. They're probably about 10 times as expensive, at least, as a typical Type 2 AC charge point. But there are commercial charging networks who will install these free of charge, potentially give you ground rent if you make them available to the public. So if you have space on your forecourt or wherever you are, and you can allow public access, then yes, you're going to have to pay a premium for the electricity that you use to charge your car, but you're going to be getting ground rent and probably a profit share off of members of the public. So that could be a win-win that didn't actually cost you anything to begin with. And it actively pulls in customers to your premises. And yes, they're already driving an electric vehicle, but they may see an electric vehicle that you have in your inventory and go, oh, I quite like that one. And, it could lead to more sales, could lead to more custom. So, yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of considering, obviously, that remarketing business, and a key element is to making sure that the car arrives with the next customer, the next owner of that vehicle, the next user of that vehicle fully charged. Is that the best way you believe that's the best sort of opportunity for the businesses to be able to do that, to be able to get that vehicle charged and ready for that next user of that vehicle?
Yeah, if you're sending a vehicle out on a test drive, generally you want to have that fully charged so that the customer can see the real world range of that vehicle and the range that it reckons it can do. And admittedly, the predicted mileage on a full charge that it will show on the dashboard normally has to be taken with a little pinch of salt. Depends on the make and model of vehicle. Some are more accurate than others, but it still gives a decent indication of the kind of condition of the battery health and so on. So yeah, I would say that fully charging that vehicle to get it out there, or near enough fully charging it, certainly above 80% state of charge, is a good way to impress your customers by letting them realize that that they want to know the true capability of that vehicle. That said, if that vehicle is going to be in long-term storage, typically aim for between 50 and 80% state of charge, which is a kind of happy medium that means that the battery is going to be sitting at a kind of healthy condition where it's not going to be degrading very, very slowly over time, I should say. But, it's not going to be degrading as quickly as it could be if it was sitting fully charged for weeks on end. So yeah, long-term storage, 50 to 80% state of charge for most EVs. And then if you're sending it out for a test drive, aim for about 100%. Because that, especially if you're selling the vehicle as well, that customer's then got to take that home, and home could be many, many miles away. So that's really good courtesy for a small amount of money ventured on electricity. That extra, courtesy that you've shown will mean that you will get more customers heading your way, because that customer will then go and tell their friends and family, oh, dealer X was really good at servicing, at knowledge, at providing the vehicle in the condition it needed to be.
And we talked earlier about charges and the infrastructure, and there's a lot of, as you alluded to, the media and the communications and press around the charging infrastructure. What messages about charges should the remarketing sector be communicating, particularly to those used car buyers or battery electric vehicles?
So absolutely, one of the important things is simply, how do you charge your car? What sockets are on the car? What plugs would you use at specific chargers to charge them? So the vast majority of electric vehicles out there today have the CCS socket, combined charging system. And it's a combination of the kind of D-shaped Type 2 socket, which is AC, with a couple of extra big fat pins for DC rapid charging underneath. There are typically separate bungs, rubber bungs, that provide some waterproofing and protection for the AC port and the extra kind of CCS DC pins. You'd be amazed how many dealers don't tell customers that their vehicle can do CCS. The customer doesn't realize that rubber bung or plastic kind of flip door, whatever it is there. And I've heard of multiple EV drivers who are veterans at this sort of thing, at a rapid charging hub, rapid charging their car. They've looked over and seen something like a Jaguar I-Pace that definitely has CCS on it. And the owner's sitting there potentially hunkered down for a few hours because they've plugged into the tethered AC socket of a triple-headed rapid charger, which is, in fairness, triple-headed rapid chargers are starting to kind of fall away now that the Renault Zoe doing AC only rapid charging has kind of lost that format war, but there still are quite a few of them. So they see this D-shaped tethered plug on a rapid charger, think it must rapid charge their car. No, it doesn't. It's going to be limited to the speed of the onboard charger. So the veteran has then gone over, tapped the window of the newbie and said, do you know that if you use this plug, you'll be able to charge a lot faster? The newbie said, oh, but my car doesn't have that. And the veteran said, get out your car a second. Out comes the bung, the eyes light up straight away. It's like, nobody told me. And that's the crucial line. The person who sold them that car did not tell them. That is fundamental knowledge, and it's something that not every EV drivers or new EV driver is going to know. So it's simple education like that. If it's a rapid charger, you would use the CCS, and this is how you access it. If it's home charging, then you just use AC. And then also simple things like etiquette as well. Do not use a rapid charger as long stay parking. It's like a petrol pump for EVs. You take what you need, stay with or near the car. By all means, nip into the service station and grab a bite to eat. Just don't abandon it for hours on end. As soon as it's ready, move it. And in fact, ideally, don't fully charge on a rapid charger, because the charging power tapers off so much towards 100% that you're wasting everyone's time, including yours. You're as well charging to about 80, 90%, depends on the car, and then moving on. And that just because you've got so much higher power speed at that point versus the real taper off. If you need a full charge, move it onto a type 2 AC charge point to get that remaining few percent. Simple etiquette like that, which is covered in the white paper, are essential things for EV dealers or EV remarketers to be telling customers. And that's going to improve the EV experience, not just for those customers, but for every other EV driver on the road as well.
I mean, I can only thank you for agreeing to collaborate with the VRA on these papers. I know that a large part of the future success for battery electric vehicles is around the education, the knowledge, as you say, the newbies versus the veterans, that passing of information. And I know that every time we speak to you, we come away with further information that we use and pass on all the way through. So it is crucial that these papers are passed on, educated within the sector. So hopefully, we will see this is the first of many of the series of white papers. And I know for now it's been positively received for this first one, and we are looking forward to the next in the series, which is due later this summer. So thank you for joining us today, Euan. It's been a pleasure, and always an education every time we do speak to you.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the next paper.